please, at the back. Good to see you. Thank you. I ask you to turn your phones on to silent mode to off altogether, please. Very disturbing for both the speakers and the committee. And also remind you that everyone needs to have been on planning training. Can we all identify that we have been on planning training and be able to be part of this committee? Most of us. That's okay. Thank you very much. The other thing for members of the public, there is some planning protocols on the seats. Okay, so that will tell you how the committee is run. Can I just say one other thing? I think she's taking the sandwiches away now. We don't always have sandwiches, but it's okay. No, it's fine. It's okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. I think more members of the public thinking we were fed every time we have a planning committee. It's only because we've been on training that we've actually had the sandwiches. Right, without further ado, can we start with members of the committee? Members of the committee, as printed. Yeah, thank you. Minutes of previous meetings, can we do them as a true record?
Subject to table amendments.
Yeah, there is a table amendment. Do you want to mention that table amendment, please?
I've tabled the sheet which gives an amendment to the minute relating to time post office, so the approval is based on the sheet that's been circulated.
Right. All those in favour? Do them as a true record. Okay. Any matters arising from them at all? No? Interest in lobbying, then can we go around the table? Councillor Stewart?
I have been lobbied on the commercial application.
Can we take that as read that everybody's been lobbied on for 14 days of all received an email? Does nobody else have any lobbying? Right, can I just say, I've been lobbied on item 12. I will not take part in the vote, but I've been assured I'm okay to still be chair. Okay. Item 15, I was copied into some emails that was sent out. I didn't comment on them, on anything or offered any information. So I'm okay. I think I'm okay. I can quote that I've been lobbied, but I'm okay still to vote on that application. Okay. Ambition of the public then.
All items are in.
Thank you. Deputations or petitions, everybody? Yeah. Okay. Public question time.
Okay, questions,
Thank you. All site visits were carried out this morning. As per the agenda, can we move on to planning appeals, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Julia Stedman, Team Leader in Development Management. As set out on pages 9 to 22, we have 2 appeals to report. Both of them were officer decisions and both of them were dismissed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments on that? Do they have to be noted, anybody? Thank you. We'll move them, yeah. Thank you. Right, planning applications. Councillor Gregory, do you want to?
Yeah, I've filled in a few.
Yeah. What can you say what you're going to do with it?
Yeah, I will leave the room for item 15.
Yeah, item 15.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, can we start with my planning application number 3, agenda item 12. This is the formation of a private car parking facility at 16 Batty Street, land between St. Philip's Close and Batty Street. Okay.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Woollen, and I'm case officer for this application. The application has been brought to the Woollen subcommittee with a number of recommendations that we received. Members listed the site. Planning Commission sought the formation of the car park at Batty Street, which is this piece of land here. The land has not been identified as valuable open space in the local plan, and officers don't consider that the land has an important character to be protected in this regard. The tree, as you can see on this photograph here, will be retained, and the formation of the car park will have an acceptable impact on visual image. Officers also consider that the impact on residential community is acceptable and there will be no detrimental harm to neighbouring properties. In terms of highway safety, officers are satisfied that the sight lines and the access are acceptable and the proposed barrier will not impede visibility. A condition has been recommended to ensure that the car park is tied to the use of the community centre, which is this building on the plan here, and that the gates will be closed when events at the community centre aren't taking place. So officers are recommending approval and I think that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There's no speakers on this. Members, Councillor Scott.
Yes, Chair, I'd like to support this application. As you see, it was important that we went on site visit this morning, particularly up Batty Street, to see how bad the parking was. That was quite mild this morning, what it normally is. And I think to have that additional parking off the main high street would help alleviate the problems. And I think it's worth noting that it's particularly only when the community centres are used for. So it will help out a lot.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I support what Councillor Scott has said. Can I just draw members' attention to, on page 32, paragraph 1023, which is to do with draining. It occurred to me that we are here replacing a green space with outstanding. And I am pleased to see that there is a condition that controls the runoff. What I'd like to know, however, is the runoff that facilitated under this condition, is it more than the existing runoff through the soil, or what is it? Because I know it says it complies with, etc., but what in effect does that mean? And how quickly does water run off? Because we are all becoming more conscious about this, about runoff from hard surfaces, which generally speaking is quicker of soil. So just like some confirmation of that.
Neil, do you want to come back?
Through you, Chair. The applicant has confirmed that the hard surfacing will be grass free. That it will be and in terms of the Environment Agency guidance, that will provide the details in terms of what they need to comply with to make sure that it's permeable to be a satisfactory runoff for the south.
Grass trees is fine.
It has to have a percolation test anyway.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it's better. It's better than what's there even at the moment. So.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Councillor Scott.
Can we go back to the main picture of the actual land? I just want to, if there was trees, what's happening about the trees that's there? Are we definitely, there will be some kind of protective order or something.
Is that your picture on that?
That's not my picture. That's not mine. But I think Eric would like to look like me.
I'm sorry.
The trees to be retained as shown on the plan, and we have condition that amended statements provided.
Right, okay, well, I'm supporting the move this application.
I'll second that.
Just one point on the conditions. One of the conditions is this is only used for the community centre. Now, I'm likely the community centre's got a long life, but one never knows the community centre. I wonder if we're putting a condition in if the community centre fails for any reason, this reverts to public car park.
Right.
They would want to
visit that. That's the part of the condition.
Variation of the condition.
Right, okay, right.
We're open for the longevity.
Well, we always are, but one never knows, does it? And if anything different, that will be automatically put in conditions. Wouldn't be used for anybody.
It's a lease.
Right, okay. Right, okay.
Right, we've got a mover and a seconder to accept officer's recommendation to approve this application. All those in favour? Anybody against? Application approved. We go on to item 13. Yes, Dan, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting this application on behalf of the case officer. The application has been brought to Woollen because the applicant is family member of Councillor Pandor. Members visited the site this morning. The application relates to the erection of boundary wall and fence and formation of children's play area at Park Preschool in Hillsborough. The proposed boundary will be 2.4 metres in height and will be constructed of natural stone and metal railing. So the main issues for consideration in this application relate to visual amenity and highway safety. So just so you're aware, this is the boundary wall and fencing that we're looking at. With this 1.8 metre railing here is here on the plan. So inside, just kind of exposing the play area there, and then the boundary wall and fence will run on here, and the gate there, and go into the farm. The fence wall will be a prominent feature in street scene. Now, no other similar examples in the area. However, the applicant has provided justification for why the wall and railing exceeds what could be erected as permitted development. They state that the boundary wall needs to be 2.4 metres in height for the safety and security of the children using the area. Officers consider that on balance, taking into account the requirement of the preschool, the harm to the character of the area in the street scene is outweighed by the requirement for those areas to be safely used. Therefore, officers are supportive of the proposed development. Following the receipt of amended plans, Highways have no objection to the application and satisfactory site lines can be achieved. I've got Steve Sampson from Highways Development Management next to you for any questions on that matter. And to summarise on those 2 points, officers are proposing favourable recommendation to members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Steve, do you want to say anything?
Through your Chair, Steve Sampson, Highways Development Management, just to expand on the comments from the Highways. Visibility from the two access points is acceptable. We asked for some an exercise to be carried out for forward visibility entering Whitworth Road from the High Street, where it's shown that the wall needs to be set back slightly from the boundary to afford forward visibility.
Is that it? Yeah. One speaker, Mr. Pandor.
I have nothing further to add in that. I think the officers have made a case, and I really don't want to waste the team's time. I don't have anything further to add, unless there's a specific question that they want to ask me.
No, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Right, members? Any comments? Councillor Scott?
Chair, I'm happy that we move this application, so I'm willing to
I'm quite happy to second it. There's not a lot to discuss, is it? We've been out on the side of it. So.
Anybody else? No. I'm not going to sum up, but I have to say I was a little bit concerned when I first saw it. 2.4 size adjacent the footpath, and certainly adjacent a road is as sort of busy as that can be. But I've been assured that I don't really want to come back on this. It's because of the requirements of the Ofsted that has got to be as high as what I do want to just mention that. Because I think it's worth bearing this committed requirements.
Through you, Chair, during the course of the application, the applicant provided additional justification, which is like you said, that Ofsted requiring the 2.4 metre high fence to keep the children safe inside. Thank you.
It's just the location and the act that is going to be. I think it will be obtrusive because it's going to be there with that height. Then I'm quite willing to support it.
In decisions, it's possible to highlight that reason, because we all have had problems in our own wards with people putting fences up, putting walls up, saying I can do this, I can do that, I can make a wall out the doors if I want to. But there are all sorts of silly stuff over here, so if you could put it in the report just to flag that point up.
I think the difference between the time scales of the chair's briefing and bringing the meeting, it's, as you know, Steve, it's the latest possible time before you can actually submit the report. I think if we can amend the report to accept that, there was some thoughts about the height of it, but given that Ofsted are requesting that if we could put something in there. The committee's done their duty of asking about the question, asking questions about the item, and we can, people, it's transparent then.
Yes, through your chair, we produce a summary of the comments as well, so that will be attached to the final.
Right, we've got a mover and a seconder to accept officer's recommendation. All those in favour? Anybody against? Application is approved unanimously. Thank you. Move on to agenda item 14 then. This is the planning application for erection of a detached dwelling associated to site works adjacent to 93 Stocksmouth Road. Those that were on last year can remember that we've already it's in the report anyway. That we've been to this application before, but I'll let you expand on that.
Thank you, Chair. Planning Commission is sought for the erection of one dwelling on land adjacent to 93 Stocksmouth Road in Northfield. So this is the proposed dwelling that the application has been brought to heavy Woollen subcommittee due to previous committee involvement. Members refused the original application in January 2018 and this was dismissed at planning appeal. The current planning application is also deferred at the April committee in order for the applicant to make some slight alterations to the width of the dwelling and put some fenestration timbers. So this is the dwelling that we're now considering. The land is unallocated, so not located in the conservation area. It currently has a large garage associated with number 93, which as you can see, that's that here, and surrounding the site is predominantly residential with level sloping downwards towards Ford Drive, down that area there. Members visited the site this morning. In the appeal decision, the planning inspectorate did not raise a concern in terms of the principle of the dwelling on this site or a contemporary approach to its design. As stated in the officer report, there is a variety of dwelling types in the area and officers are comfortable with its relationship to surrounding properties. The proposed dwelling will be of a contemporary design and incorporates large areas of glazing, and it will be constructed of brick render and timber cladding for the external walls. Officers considered that the dwelling would sit harmoniously with other dwellings in the street scene, and from that regard we're comfortable. With regards to residential immunity, officers consider that on balance the previous reason for refusal has been overcome. So whilst it's acknowledged that the footprint of the dwelling is now larger, its overall scale has been reduced and some of the main bulk of massing that's close to neighbouring properties comes from the existing garage at the site, which you can see here and which you saw on my previous photograph. So when taking into account the significant reduction in height and the fact that a large area of the bulk massing comes from what's already there, officer on balance happy with the relationship between the proposed dwelling and the neighbouring properties. Given the repositioning of the openings, officers are happy that there's no harmful overlooking loss of privacy to neighbouring sites. In terms of representation that have been received, these have come from six different households, and as you can see in the report, the issues that are raised are in.
Nia, can you hear at the back? Are you okay? Sorry.
Sorry, I can just see
No,
that.
it's fine.
So in terms of representation, these have come from six different households, and they're summarised in the officer report. In terms of highway safety, the proposed access is an acceptable width. There's internal turn space within the site, and there's adequate parking for number 93, which is this second house here, and for the proposed dwelling. So in terms of highways, this is acceptable. And overall, officers consider that the previous reason for refusal has been overcome.
Thank you. Steve, do you want to say anything?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you. There's 4 speakers on this. Mr. Sweeting, please. Mr. Sweeting, can I ask you to come up to the microphone? If you can talk loud enough, we can talk at the corners if you like. Can I just remind you, you've got 3 minutes and keep managed. Thank you.
My name is Johnny Sweeting. My family has lived at 1 Ford Drive for the last 35 years. previous proposal was refused twice due to overdevelopment and loss of residential amenity. It's well known that overdevelopment is an ongoing issue and concern in Murfield. The previous new dwelling has around 20% larger footprint than the previously refused proposal. Is this still not overdevelopment? Site location plan in the agenda shows the various property boundary lines as they actually are on the ground. It is the added red line which is incorrectly drawn between number 93 and Wimford Drive. I purchased a piece of land from the previous owner of 93 and the land registry holds evidence of both sale and purchase, and I have a copy here of my purchase of that land. The various drawings supplied supporting applications show inconsistencies which make it difficult for others to fully ascertain what is actually being proposed. For example, when viewing the architect's street scene elevation, the following points can be noted. The new dwelling does virtually fill the whole width of the site, something which was commented on at the previous committee meeting. Conveniently, this drawing does not show the site boundaries in the 93A, which is the edge of Ford Drive itself, and how close to this the proposed new dwelling will be. Less than a metre now separates the proposed new dwelling and the boundaries of the 93. Before this was 1.8 metres, and even this was considered too close at the previous meeting. The drawing does not indicate the large roof overhangs to number 93. It may be only possible to carry out any high-level maintenance by accessing the site of the proposed new dwelling. In order to create the level garden behind the garage, a 1 metre high retaining wall was built, which is located 2 metres from the boundary hedge. We would request that a 2 metre high boundary hedge to Wimford Drive is measured from the upper level of the garden, not below. We fully support all 13 conditions under item 12 as recommended by the officers, but with the addition of the increase in height to the boundary hedge to Wimford Drive. We trust that the committee will refuse this application in its current form.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence, please. Mr. Lawrence, can you either use the microphone or come to the end of the table, whichever you want? Just a little bit hard to hear.
Okay. My name is Robin Lawrence. We live at number 93A, the adjacent property, and object to the development along with at least 6 or 7 other confirmed objections. We object to the size of the proposed property and its large footprint. While the property is described as a bungalow, it still has a second floor with 2 large rooms, including the master bedroom. The existing properties all have space around them, where this property will be squeezed into the space between 2 established houses. On the plans submitted, there are no clear heights for the roof and eaves as given for the adjacent houses. We are concerned that without confirmed height measurements, the building will grow as the roof space is increased to allow reasonable headroom in both the ground floor and first floor. If planning is approved, will there be enforcement to ensure that the so-called bungalow doesn't end up as a full 2-storey building? The previous plans were refused and the appeal failed due to the size and close proximity to surrounding properties. This has only been increased as the footprint of the building has increased by almost a quarter and is significantly larger than the surrounding properties. On both sides of the proposed development, the building is going to be virtually filling the plot with only a pass width to the boundary. No nearby property is built so close to another. The front of the building is being moved further forward towards the road than the previous application. This means that the parking will be significantly less and the ability to manoeuvre cars will be reduced. There is currently no on-road parking available due to yard lines and all spaces being used for existing houses. Neither the existing property at 93 nor the new property will have a garage. Realistically, the space allowed for manoeuvring 2 cars at the new property and the 3 existing cars at number 93 is not enough as on the plans for both buildings the parking spaces are virtually against the walls, not allowing any access to the vehicle once parked. We are concerned about the actual building of the property, which will be disruptive and based on the nearby development will take place every day of the week. So peaceful weekends will be non-existent. I believe there was to be no development at number 97 on Sundays, however this seems to have been completely overlooked. We've lived in our house for many years and continue to do so. We value the space around our property, and this was one of the reasons for living there. We do not view our properties as investment opportunities, but as our homes.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Jake Eashley, Foreign Design Studio. I'm the planning agent for this application at 93 Stockbank Road. Well, we have previously submitted an application for a much larger two-storey dwelling, which was previously brought through this committee. With the previous application, we came to the unanimous conclusion with the planning officer, ourselves, the committee and the planning inspector agreeing that the site was in a sustainable location and it is in an appropriate position for a dwelling given that the land is allocated for any particular use and is in a well-established residential area with good links to Murfield and the wider vicinity. We are also comfortable with the access, as our Highways Development Management. The planning inspector also raised no issues to utilise the existing access. Admittedly, the previous proposal was refused and dismissed at appeal. However, since then, myself, the planning officer and the client have worked closely to take into account the committees, the inspectors and also the neighbours' previously raised concerns, enabling us to reduce the bulk, the scale and the impact, more importantly, on surrounding dwellings significantly. Working with the existing garage block has allowed us to maintain the existing levels of the site and not adversely increase the impact on surrounding dwellings, but actually improve the situation for 1-4 Drive, where the dwelling is currently overlooked by the existing garage roof structure, which Nia did show an image of earlier on. If you could just scroll, you can just see there on that image by Nia, that gabled roof by the garage there. We've actually improved that scenario by removing that existing roof structure and modifying it, and now creating a more of a hipped roof arrangement by taking that gable away from the boundary, thus reducing the impact. As well as this, we've kept both eaves level and ridge level much lower than both of the properties surrounding both of the surrounding dwellings, which minimises impact on the street scene and these two properties in particular. Using this much reduced bulk as a starting point, we have then been able to keep habitable windows in well-screened areas or on elevations that have no conflicting views with neighbouring properties. The proposal now seeks to build a good quality, contemporary, dormer-type bungalow that will positively contribute to the street scene, as well as the much-needed local housing stock without detriment to any of the surrounding properties. And I would ask that you support the planning officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Mr. Nibbs.
My name is Dean Nibbs, and along with my wife, we are the applicants and live at number 93, adjacent to the proposal. Having had the previous application rejected, we have thought very, very carefully about designing an alternative scheme that would address the issues raised. Importantly, we wanted to significantly reduce the bulk and mass of the dwelling. After much consultation with our architect and planning officer, we agreed on a contemporary dormer bungalow, designed with the vast majority of accommodation on an easily accessible ground floor, thereby radically altering the scheme from a 4-bed house to the edges of the plot to a 3-bed dormer bungalow positioned considerably further into the plot. This will be a bespoke designed building for life, of which there is a shortage of this type in the locality, and would be a positive addition to the housing stock. And as such, the scheme now will make the ideal property for us to move into, planning our own retirement in the location we wish to remain in. Whilst the ground floor footprint of the proposal is larger than the previous submission, due to it now being a bungalow with the majority of the room on the ground floor, it is considerably narrower and the bulk of the property has been reduced by more than 60%. Further, and the walls facing the adjacent houses have been reduced by more than 50%. Overall, the building still only occupies 30% of the plot, leaving a generous 70% of amenity space. We've decided to incorporate the existing garage structure into the new house to form the rear half of the building. This is because it is already there, with 93A and 1-4 Drive already having an established relationship with it. Further, no windows are to be incorporated into the existing garage walls facing neighbours to leave it looking as it already is. However, we have hit the gabled re-elevation garage roof to create a more open aspect for the occupants of 4 Drive than currently exists. On the north side, facing 93A, we wanted the design to ensure that a large part of the bulk and massing was removed to counter the upheld complaint of overbearing. This has been achieved by adopting the bungalow design and moving the new north elevation a lot further into the site away from 93A, creating considerably more amenity space around the building and making the front elevation narrower and smaller than the front elevations of the houses either side, and the ridge height much lower. The 3D perspectives shown in the drawing pack clearly show the reduced massing and set well away from neighbouring properties. Great consideration has been taken on this scheme to ensure that no habitable rooms face or have a direct line of sight with neighbouring properties' windows, so there will be no harmful effects, no harmful impact, as confirmed by the officer's report. Due to the sloping nature of the site, level differences of adjacent plots and existing... Sorry? In conclusion, we have tried very hard to come up with solutions to objections raised, as endorsed by the planning officer's recommendation for approval, and would ask you to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. No more speakers, members. Anybody? Johnny indicating? No, sorry. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to see that the sort of developer has had a rethink about the design of this and the size of it and everything else. And I know that they do some brilliant designs of houses and everything else, and I'm not saying that because he's just sat behind me and I know him anyway. But the thing I do have a problem with is I do still think that it's too big for this site. And I know we're saying that there's been a 60% reduction in the bulk and everything else, but looking at the plan that Mia put up earlier showing... No, the other one. Yes, that one. It still looks really squashed in on that side there. And I do have concerns about that because I do still think it's too large and too overbearing for that site. So that's what I mean. I think we need to go back again and try and look and see if we can get it smaller. But all I will say is if members are in favour of it being passed, could I ask that we remove the permitted development rights and come back and decide to do anything else? And could I also ask that the boundary hedge is maintained? But as so
that's in our gift.
It's in here. A condition has been recommended to ensure that the boundary hedge will be retained at the same heights. Page 5. Page 5.
I echo what Kath said, that I'm still not happy with it. I'm not convinced that there's enough space next door on the existing property for 3 cars. I think it's too big, and I echo everything Kath said. It might well be a lovely design, it's built for fantastic stuff. I just don't think there's enough room in there to squeeze this in. It's just going to not fit in the street scene neither, so I'm of a mind to object to it.
Councillor Hall.
Well, I did notice I was further up the road that what a state of the art kind of get up that we have today. But I want to go on what Graham said. I honestly cannot see how you're going to get 3 cars in front of each house with the way that it is at this moment. I mean, one of them, the current proposal is 4.8 metres longer than what it was originally, and it's just a shade wider, but you know, I think it's overdevelopment in that area, and I can't support it.
Councillor Lynn, you'd like it?
Through you, Chair. I'm here. I was just wondering if you could put the previous I'm just wondering if this is like an artist's interpretation, and just picking up the point about there not being any height indicated on the plans. You know, we've had a recent application come before us, you know, I think it was the last time or the time before, where the pitch roof ended up as pitch roof, and it ended up being 1.5 metres higher, and I've just got a concern that whilst that looks quite low, it is an artist's interpretation, and in reality could be a lot higher, and as we know, it's very difficult then to lower the roof after it's been built. I do agree with what other councillors have said about it being an over-development of the site, and also somebody mentioned about there being 70% amenity and 30% footprint. From looking at the
other plan that you had, I can't get my head around that.
30% of the existing. That's right.
Okay.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to? I asked. Sorry, I did ask this on the bus this morning. But do you want to identify the ridge heights? And it is in the drawings, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So through you, Chair, in terms of your comment about the artist's impression, we do have to scale plans. So I can confirm that the overall ridge height will be 5.5 metres, with the eaves height at 3.6 metres. So in relation to the application that was previously refused by members and the planning inspector, the overall height was actually 7.4. So we've got a reduction of nearly 2 metres in the overall ridge height and a reduction in the eaves height by about a metre.
Thank you, Chair. I read what the officer's recommendation is, and the officers are of the opinion that this can be supported. However, if we want to refuse it, then we've got to think of reasons that will support that. And it does seem to me, I'm sorry, I will say at this stage, I think the design is actually really quite imaginative, and I do actually like it. I think it's a very good and imaginative addition to the street scene. However, I think like some other members, I think particularly if you look at the plan, it's using a huge amount, particularly the width of the plot, and it goes very close. I don't know what the distance is, but between 93 and the new house, but they are very close together, and that's certainly not replicated on the other side of 93, where there's quite a big space, and there's obviously quite a big space the other side. So I think on balance I would come down on the refusal side, but really on the score of overdevelopment. I think despite the imagination that's gone into this, it's an overuse of the site, in a way I'm sorry to have to do this because I think a lot of effort's gone into try and have an imaginative solution to putting a house there. But I think I would have to come down against it, despite officers' recommendation.
Before I fetch you in, Kath, I really do need to raise this as an issue. And we need to be extremely careful because I've seen people sort of nodding about this, and this is really about the way that the inspector came back and he accepts the principle of development on this stuff. And we need to be extremely careful because I think the chances of it going through if we are going to be fairly high, to be quite honest with you, because this is the third time and we've amended the drawings and amended everything to try to accommodate. I'm not trying to steer the committee, but we just need to take it into consideration. We really do, because we're going to get ourselves into a little bit of a fix as far as that's concerned, because they've tried and better tried to accommodate the piece of land that's actually on there and try to. If you go down that street, I think there's other places where they are fairly tight on space in between the buildings on there. So I think that needs to be raised at this point. Kath, Councillor Scott. Sorry.
Yeah, I was of the view with service intensification, but I was going back to what the inspector did say that in principle they did accept development on that site. Now I'm happy to move this application, but I wanted to remove the permitted development rights. Going down further, so I'll move this application.
John.
A couple of comments, thank you, works really well and shows just what kind of reductions have been made on site. I don't know what the restrictions are on the actual site. I hear what the objectors have said, but what's actually causing me more concern is the relationship between 93 and its next door, and its immediate next door neighbour, the house building. That's the thing that's really causing me an issue. I know it's like a good book, you turn to the back for the conditions to the end, and there are some good conditions in there, and I think they're all acceptable about removal of limited development rights and things like that. I want those to stay. I am comfortable with the size of this thing. I was nodding with you when you said it's been established that the principle is sound. It's still that relationship between those two buildings, and I would be uncomfortable about refusing this today, because to me it would seem unreasonable.
Can I ask a question which may prove beneficial to the committee? The space about buildings, could you comment about space about buildings and habitable windows and other issues about the space about buildings? Can you give us some figures? Because I think members would really like to actually understand them as well.
Through the chair. So we don't have the space about building policy anymore,
Right.
But we're looking at the local plan in terms of ensuring that each neighbouring property has a good level of unity. Do you want me to run through
Yes,
each?
please.
So in terms of, we'll start with number 93, like Councillor Lawson said it. So in terms of 93, we've got a distance of 1.8 metres between the side elevation of this house and the side elevation of the proposed dwelling. So the host dwelling has secondary habitable windows in there. So we've got ground floor and window and first floor bedroom windows. The applicant has stated that they will block up the ground floor window because the planning inspector did raise a concern in terms of the loss of overbearing. And in terms of the overall height of the proposed dwelling now, that it will give a bit sloping away from the first floor and the third windows.
No.
So we're comfortable with that relationship for those reasons. In terms of the impact on number 1 for drive, we've got a distance of approximately 8.5 metres from the rear elevation here, which doesn't have any to here. It's an indirect relationship where there's a third floor bedroom, a small bedroom window on here, and then we've got a conservatory and habitable windows, private and space there.
And what windows are in that elevation?
In this elevation of the proposed building, there's no habitable room openings there or ground floor.
No.
We've got first floor opening, bedroom opening there, and non-habitable opening of the first floor. And just through you, Jack, the red dotted line here, this bit, is the existing garage. So that relationship is established.
Okay. And is there any other questions?
Not any other questions or comment. Whilst I understand that the inspector said he's not against the principle of developing this site, that doesn't give the developer carte blanche to do what they want. And you was somebody referred to the table, and unless my maths is a very long time since I went to school, it is shorter, but the footprint's bigger. So if we turned it down last time for being over large, then it's even larger from a footprint point of view.
Well, relative to height as well, though.
Yeah, I accept the height come down, but the footprint's gone that way. So all I'm pointing out is it's too big last time. It is, but you're absolutely right.
Is there any other comments? Anybody? John?
Previously, shall we, in these bound positions where we've got a metre here, a metre there, we have actually put it back to officers to negotiate and see whether there's anything else that can be done in terms of relationships between buildings. We have done that in the past. I don't know whether it's appropriate here, it's just a suggestion that's not been mentioned yet.
I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't think it's fair to the applicant.
Then I'll be voting for it.
Yeah, I just think we make a decision here, because I'm fairly sure it'll go back to the inspector if it's refused anyway. So someone will make a decision somewhere along the line. We've got a mover, Councillor Scott, have you moved that sector?
Yeah, no, that's the one.
Councillor Provision sector. I think the better just go to the vote. I think it is a balanced decision. Members will make a decision on whatever they feel is right on this particular one. All those in favour of that officer's recommendation then? All those against? Are you quick enough? All those in favour of the officer? All those against? That really is a bastard, isn't it? Is it casting? Is it casting? That vote is 7-6 in favour of officers' recommendations. So that application is approved. Thank you.
Chair, can I just say that's what you're doing from we take out the committee development right and keep the hedge.
Keep the hedge.
Keep the hedge. What's your green? Myrtle, what kind of fees and green Myrtle? Thank you, Chair.
You want to keep on board?
Hey?
Right. Agenda item 15 then. This is a planning application changing the use from A1 retail to A1 retail and A3 restaurant and cafe drinking establishment ginger whale people for control. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So, Julia Stedman, Health Management Team Leader, and presenting this application on behalf of fundamental team. So, the application site, which we'll see from this morning, is the ginger whale located at 344 Oxford Road in Woollen. So, the site is in use as a coffee shop, a deli and specialty food shop, following a temporary flexible change of use being granted from a Class A1 use to a mix of Class A1 and A3 uses. Due to the limitations which are set out in the legislation, a full planning application now needs to be submitted for the change of use to become permanent. So the only reason the application is being referred to heavy water committee today is because the applicant is related to a ward councillor. So this is in accordance with the council's scheme of delegation. As you will see from the agenda, there have been no representations received. And nor have there been any objections raised from any consultees. In this instance, being Highway Development Management and Environmental Services, subject to conditions requested by Environmental Services. As set out in your update, following the production of the agenda, some discussions have taken place regarding suggested conditions, which relate to the hours of opening. So, in light of those discussions, there's been some slight amendments to the wording of those suggested to members today. Because as officers, we do feel it is appropriate to retain some management of those opening hours should circumstances at the site change in the future. For example, the site is either sold on or leased at some point. So, as set out in the agenda, there are two recommended conditions in there in the update to protect residential amenity, and recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Through Chair, we've done a site review with some observations and traffic flows and such, and we've been relatively small concern with more concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Mead.
Yeah, is it okay if I
come and stand at if you come and stand at the end of there, you've got 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that the plan officers have taken into consideration some of our concerns and including these in the revised conditions, so thank you for that. The only comment I have to make around the remaining conditions is about having to advise residents of any evening activity. For the 3 years we've been in business on these premises, we've had no issues whatsoever with our neighbours. We're considerate business people and respect the fact that we operate near residential properties. If every time we have an evening event we need to advise them, it could result in alerting them to something they've never even noticed before. Our property faces out on Oxford Road with no properties opposite. Wired hairdressing lies between Ginger Whale and 348 to 352 Oxford Road. Grove Square is behind Ginger Whale with no windows or doors facing in a direction, so anyone living there would be unlikely to even know we had anything going on. Also, it's not a large property with only seating for 10 to 12 people inside, so there'll be no large gatherings. Where I live, there's a pub around the corner that hosts large events, some of which are outside, and in the 25 years I've lived there, I've never received any notification about anything. There are pubs all over the ward in residential areas, and I'm sure they're not required to advise residents of anything. We're not a pub, but we are licensed. We plan to hold the odd low-key tasting event or special club, so I see no good reason to have to alert residents to activities that thus far they've not even been aware of. Comes to Public Hall and Grove Chapel hold evening clubs and events, as did Red House Museum, all within a stone's throw from Woollen, where we are based, and they're all much bigger premises than ours. I'm not sure if they are to send letters or notify residents. If we start, for example, a weekly book club, we would be expected to print out and post letters weekly to all properties mentioned in the documents. Seems a bit overkill to me. Whilst we've been no trouble with our neighbours thus far, if we start posting letters every week, possibly more than once a week, they may not be pleased with us, especially if they have concerns about the unnecessary mail that's going to end up in their bin. We'd be grateful if you could consider these points and remove the requirements to inform residents prior to each event. As a suggested alternative, perhaps initial contact with residents to ascertain if they would like to be advised or not, maybe a better approach. If anyone does want to be notified each time they have an event, I'll be happy to print something out and post it through that box. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Members? Anybody? Accepting the update.
Through Chair, do you want me to read out the conditions which the officers have suggested in light of the presentation just see what members think. So the first condition recommended by officers, that's then, other than the prior approved hours committed under condition 2, which I'll go on to next, the UT lab committee shall not be open to customers outside the hours of 8 o'clock till 8 o'clock, Monday to Saturday, and Sundays 10 till 4. So that's the first condition. In terms of the second condition, so this is the one just to have a think about now, the premises may be open to customers for the serving of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises, limited to tasting events and invite-only events between the hours of 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock, so this is at night, on not more than 2 evenings per week, Monday to Saturday. And then we've then included on condition that details of the time and date have been provided to the name and occupants of numbers 342 Oxford Road, numbers 348 to 3528 inclusive on Oxford Road, and numbers 2 to 12 inclusive on Grove Square in advance of such events. So it's that final sentence there whether members think that is appropriate or not. Thank you, Chair.
Get yourself together.
Just a thought, no alcohol outside. There will be smoking also, which will cause a gathering that may take drinks.
Sorry. I can't hear the coffee.
I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
I think the issue of alcohol is easily covered, that letting people come in and out if they want to smoke or leave or whatever. I'm not sure we can prevent that, so we just have to wait.
But there's other restrictions on
Well,
that.
it should be conditioned by licensing then, because that is part of the licensing conditions. Because of the vicinity of household, that's what we say.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Just turning over in my mind how we can deal with that notification condition, which Mr. Mills has referred to, and perhaps, well, rather than removing it altogether, full stop after Monday and Saturday, perhaps if we want to ensure that the neighbours know what might be going on, that I think we suggested a general notification that events could take place. I don't know how to do that quite. Maybe other members have got better ideas.
We can make that as a temporary condition anyway. See how it works. See how it works. Over a 12-month period.
Through you, Chair, we could, that second part of the condition, we could do that, but then they would need to come back and submit a further application.
You can't have everything, Mr. Mead, that you come back or you deliver 3 letters, I think it was 3 or 5 letters. Whichever is, I don't know which would you prefer.
So what was the suggestion?
You can do it as a temporary measure, see how it runs for 12 months, and then you would have to come back from discharging that condition.
So you mean, so have the condition as it's written,
right,
operate for a year,
right,
do what the condition requires, and then after a year feed back to this planning committee how many people had said I don't need a letter or thank you, it was helpful.
Okay, so
and then you can make a decision in the long term whether it was needed to be
You could take it out altogether.
So basically, go with my suggestion to approach the residents, whether they want letters. If they want letters, I'll give them, that's fine. If they don't, I can come back and...
I think we were saying, no, if you do what the condition says for a year, and if it's proved too onerous or unnecessary, you come back and prove that with some residents' confirmation, and then we take it off or we leave it on if they've said it's helpful.
Okay.
So you still have to do it to start with.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah. That's a compromise.
That's a temporary. John?
Chair, just to sort of comment on what you just said, that in the past it's been perfectly reasonable for us to say 6 months, not a year.
Yeah.
For the last few years I've been on here, we've often said 6 months rather than.
Well, the thing is, it gives them opportunity for 12 months to actually see how it's working. 6 months probably won't. To be honest with you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Chair.
John, I'm not over.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering why we need to sort of inform the residents of what's happening, because this business has been here for 3 years, it's been running, and there's been no complaints and no issues with any of the neighbours. And in all the years I've sat on this planning committee, I don't think I've ever come across anything with a condition like this where they've got to write and let the neighbours know what they're going to be doing. I mean, it's a successful business. Believe me, I wish we'd got one like this in Murfield. And I just feel as if we're trying to hamstring them. And I'm not saying that just because she's a colleague and everything else. As I said, I've never come across anything before where we've had to inform the residents when it's a business that's been running with no trouble and no issues.
I can't remember an elected member running a gin palace before.
Well, I know that it's big enough to be a palace chef by the look of it.
A very small palace.
Yes.
Well, I agree with what my colleague just said in regards to having the advance notice. I don't understand why.
I just think we need to be...
Yeah, I get that, but what if it's just a notice on the window or something like that to say that this is happening rather than physical? If it's trying to help new business, established businesses continue working and we want more businesses like that, is it a legal requirement for them to actually physically go out and do that? Whereas if it's just something on the window that they can put through, it helps obviously them to advertise as well as the fact that,
I think we just want to be mindful. You're granting the use for the premises.
Absolutely.
We want to help the small business be flexible and maintain their successful business. If they leave, for whatever reason, the use exists for that premises under that permission. So if somebody else comes in who doesn't necessarily operate as well or neighbourly, you won't have any controls and there could be conflict.
It's not the person, it's the building.
It's
the building that we control. Councillor Turner, brilliant.
I agree. I don't remember seeing this sort of condition before, but it's not exactly the most onerous task in the world to deliver a few leaflets. It isn't quite a residential area. And as Matthias has rightly pointed out, we don't know in 12 months, 2 years, that could turn into anything once that licence has been granted. And I think, given the fact that it is in a highly residential area, this seems a reasonable thing to do. And as rightly pointed out, for a 12-month trial. And if it's not necessary for 12 months, fine, we can come back and take it away. I just feel that this is a slightly different situation than normal. I think the revised recommendation of the conditions are acceptable, and I would propose we remove those and accept those.
Councillor Scott?
Yeah, I was just going to move the application.
That's fine. With the condition.
Yeah.
You're right.
I think the thing is, Cathy touched on it a little bit. Anybody that's been on licensing, where you've got planning and licensing that don't work together, total sector, I can understand officers where they're coming from to say, should this be sold as a going concern, as is now, you've got to have all those licences in place, premises license, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think, I know it's an handful of leaflets which can be a bit of a bind, let's face it, we do it every year, but I can see officers' points on all right to go with it for a year.
And we're accepting that it's going to be temporary over the 12-month period, is that okay?
On that condition, yeah.
All those in favour? Anybody against? That's unanimous then. Thank you. Thank you for your